wait. Oh, I see. I set it for 10:30 p.m.
Oh,
Oh, this is a little Mercury retrograde scheduling, but
funny.
hi.
Hi.
And it's partly because I just was so fortunate to wind up on your self love gathering workshop this morning. And so that was fun to like allow our scheduling around that. And I'm transformed from being a part of that. So
Yeah,
thank you
thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you for being flexible and moving the time to come.
Sure. Oh my gosh, that was just such medicine to be a part of. So yes, so you all who are just joining us, this is my friend Stacy Yardley, who I love to share, just a 10-second synopsis of our story, right? How we were friends in high school on the dance team together. We were the dance girls, right?
Yep.
and and then we fell out of touch for years. And when our 30-year high school reunion came up, yeah, because we're old enough for that, even though you'd never
Yeah,
know it,
we
right?
are.
That we reconnected a few years ago when our San Diego high school crew reunited. So, and then yeah, discovered, oh my God, you're like one of my favorite coaches, and now I have to always invite you when I do anything like this. And then yeah, just getting to be a part of your gathering that you just put together with divine inspiration this week, and that was so
Yeah.
solid and beautiful. I mean, you run such a beautiful group experience. I'm
Thank
so glad I
you.
got to be a part of that. I always knew you would because I really hadn't joined for any of your group things yet. But that was wow, so inspiring on so many levels. So thank
Thank
you.
you. Yeah, the group thing for me, it's just something that comes natural, I think. It's just it's one of those things that like I just love being in front of people, and allowing my gifts to come through in a way that there's just something about a collective energy, right? Like I love one-on-one work. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely love working with people one-on-one. But when you get into collective energy of group work, it's just so much fun because everybody brings their own essence to it, right? Um, my circles are like that too, really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Circles are more of a facilitation thing though, where it's more collaborative and everybody's sharing their own thoughts and things.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
This is kind of a combination, right, of like teaching
Uh-huh.
and sharing and
Yeah. But you did a great job of making it interactive. And I love how you had different ways that you were helping us embody the message, right? With having your friend Mary Lou speak and share her story,
yeah.
and with inviting us to keep sharing our realizations, and then
Mm-hmm.
how you had us do the movement and dancing is such an awesome like leading edge way to embody and anchor, right? That's a way that like coaches know to
Yeah.
like anchor the information and the integration with something like dancing it out, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
and because you also specialize in dance.
Distracted by these flashes.
Maybe it's me that's
Your
weird.
camera's like mirroring. So I'm like, I'm not used to like
Isn't
touch
it
the
funny?
side of your face. No, that's the left side. No,
I
like
know. It's disorienting.
it really is. I'm
this
like, wait, I'm
this
trying to
StreamYard, you're like,
like,
oh,
what's going on?
something's different.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's so distracted. So real.
It's good to know that et too, you too, even though you're like, I love you're one of my friends who looks so freaking gorgeous in your gray, as I'm
Oh,
like still solidly
that's not gray.
coloring my hair.
Yeah, this isn't gray. This is like glitter.
It's
No,
so gorgeous though, like it looks so pretty.
no, yeah, I don't know.
So,
I don't know what it is, but yeah, go ahead. No, but
anyways, yeah,
like, what were you talking about? Just embodying, right? Embodying
yeah.
self-love and using all of our tools in our toolbox around that, right? The way that I work with it is holistically, right? The whole system of self-love, a heart, mind, body, spirit. And I just really love incorporating all of those pieces in our journey because that's what we are, right? We're heart, mind, body, and spirit.
Mm.
And it's so good to just integrate all of it at once, or, as a practice and not just think of it as just spirituality, right? Or self-love is just taking care of your body,
Mhm.
or loving your body or, those kind of things. So it really is a holistic practice, really.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and I do love that you as a coach, because I know part of your background, or a big part of your background is in dance, and you're even are also a Zumba teacher, certified and do that when you want to
Yeah.
and add that. So yeah, I find that exciting that you're bringing it all together, and that's obviously why you have such an impact on people, is because you're helping us be aware that we're all those aspects and bring that in for the alchemy of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So important. And when you approached me with this topic, it was like, how can I speak to this topic from my perspective, right? In such a way that it's applicable to everybody. Because I think that sometimes we hear like the magic of conscious relationships, right? Like, what does that look like? And, relationship isn't just, oh, my glasses are like crooked. I'm sorry, I'm distracted. Do not look at my
There's some symbolic something going on there.
my ears are crooked. Did you know that? You have one ear that's higher than the other. Hairdresser told me that once. Anyway, yeah, so like self-love to me is like so critical in relationships. It is something that I think the way I see it is you can only love someone or be as conscious in a relationship as you love and are as conscious with yourself. And if you are not, in that conscious relationship with yourself, then how can you possibly show up consciously for another?
Yeah,
right?
so clear. And some of what you brought up today that really spoke to me and felt new and fresh along these lines. Because, yeah, a lot of it, I feel like I've been learning about this and growing on this topic in so many ways and all the time. And it's definitely my biggest work. Well, I love that you were bringing that too. This whole like, I need to work on myself thing is part of that kind of inner mean girl. I love that term that you help us use, that we can realize we have this inner part of us that can be really mean. And that
Yeah.
really the basis of this is rewiring that with ourselves. I love that that was so clear with what you shared too, is that it's about our self-talk. I wrote it down right here. Self-talk and our ability to manage our minds. Like that's
Yeah.
still what it comes down to. That's the way to change it, right? Because
It's everything.
boy, we can get in that awareness like, boy, I just don't love myself. How am I going to actually start to? So
Yeah.
I just felt like I got a lot of hows. And part of it was like your great presentation on boundaries. Got so much out of that. And how, yeah, just different pieces about how that's actually being more respectful to other people when we're more rooted in what our boundaries are, right? And able to express that. And, oh, and like when you were talking about things like how, as people pleasers, for instance, that was one little piece, and the self worth issues that go with that, and how that
Yeah.
actually can like mess with relationships when we'll try to like
It's tough.
override. I've totally seen myself do this recently. Try to
Mhm.
override even conversations or situations because I think I'm like trying to take care of someone, but it's not very respectful actually.
No.
And it's coming from my lack of self-worth, thinking it's my job to make sure I'm always keeping someone happy, and
Mhm.
if I'm not, and then that triggers me where I can't even listen anymore in a conversation because I'm just like freaking out that I'm not pleasing,
Yep.
right? And
Yep.
so it's, wow, it still comes back to that freaking self-worth, which, it's like I'm just so ready to shift and change. So will you speak more on any of that that you want
On
to?
any or all.
Yeah.
Gosh, where do I start? Like,
Yeah.
I think that, well, just like as I was hearing you recap all of that, it really comes down to anchoring in ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Really loving and knowing our worth, our intrinsic, infinite worth. Because when we're coming from a place of low self-worth or low self-esteem or not being good enough, right? That's such a deep wound for so many people. We end up coming from a place of lack, right? So we're in lack in relationships as we start
Mm,
out, right? So
mm,
you don't come into a relationship with an abundant mindset. You're coming in with a lack mindset. I'm not good enough, so therefore I have to please you. I have to
right.
do this. I have to do that to make it better, to make it enough. And then you do end up sending yourself the wrong messages, right? That you're not good enough, even in that process of like,
Yeah.
we'll make them happy. And the thing is, I think that we often, especially as women, but men are like this too, like nurturing, right? Or we
Mm,
see the way that we want to, we can see like, oh, I can fix this way, or I can do this way, or I know this, so I can share that, which doesn't mean that you don't, but you can like do it in such a way that it's respectful and you have boundaries in that process, right?
mm,
So
mm.
any kind of relationship, whether that be a friendship, a partner, a parent child, right?
Yeah.
We oftentimes, especially with those closest to us, we
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes feel like we have the right? Or we have the authority to speak into their life because they're so close to us.
Yeah.
We have like the permission,
Yeah.
right? Well, you're my child, so I'm your mother, so I have permission
Mm-hmm.
therefore to tell you what to do because I'm your mom, right? And that's not necessarily the case. If you really love somebody,
Mm.
you're going to trust and believe that they have the capacity and the ability to figure things out and to grow and to be their own person and to do their own thing without your telling them what's right and what's
Yeah.
wrong, how to do
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
right? So it's just lack. It's just all coming from a lack and scarcity of like, it's not good enough. You're not good enough. I'm not good enough. What do we need to do here to make it good enough?
Yeah.
When you just accept that everything is good enough as it is, right?
Yeah,
Then
and if this is such a specific example of how, as we shift that within ourselves, it's really going to improve our relationships so much because we actually are going to treat other people so much better. Because you almost might think like, okay, so what if I don't love myself as long as I'm loving others, and they at least that's still got to be good for them if I'm making it all about them. But it's actually not, right? Because it ends up getting us in all these dynamics, and we're probably getting triggered and resentful,
well,
right?
and
And so it's the
you're
source of so
pulling.
much of the problems. It's not a loving thing to do for you or them to
If
not know what your boundaries are, much less express them, right?
in my opinion,
Or let them have boundaries,
yeah,
like
yeah,
you said.
in my opinion, if you are not coming from a self-love place in a
Yeah.
relationship, you're being very selfish.
Ah.
Okay, let me explain that. Because
Ah.
you're looking to someone else to meet needs and to fill holes that are not their responsibility to fill,
Mm-hmm.
right? That we can't look to other people to fill the gaps within us.
Yeah.
And when we do that, we actually are putting pressure on them. Like nobody
Mm-hmm.
can be everything to us, right?
Yeah.
Nobody can be the one thing. Like, you
Mm.
know what, Jerry Maguire? Like there's the whole you complete me thing, like
Mm.
gotta go because
Mm.
there's no such thing. You
Right.
are already whole and complete as you are.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
No one can complete you, right?
Yeah. Right.
Self.
Right.
So if we come in a relationship like that, like, well, I'm better with you, or I need you, or I don't feel whole without you, then we're actually doing the relationship a disservice because we're
Mm.
looking to pull from somebody else
Mm.
rather than give into the
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's about giving
Yeah.
and being present
Right.
and all of that. And if we're in the place of need and pulling, then we're not giving.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we think
It's
we're
so
giving,
tricky.
right?
It's
We think
so
we're
tricky.
giving by like, okay, I'm going to help you. I'm going to give to you. I'm going to serve you. But yet again, if it's coming from a place of lack, like I'm not good enough unless I
Yeah.
do this. Then,
Mm. Yeah, and it's really just setting that person up for this sticky situation, right? Where we're look it's just yeah, it's not fair and it's harming the dynamic and it can create these patterns that can really harm relationships, right?
yeah.
And keep disconnecting us from ourselves more and more probably.
Well, it
Yeah.
becomes codependent, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah. And do you
Codependent.
think I've heard more talk recently of how just yeah, most of us have been modeled a form of relationship that is more like codependent and that's kind of become the standard
Yeah.
that isn't healthy or functional, but and so yeah, that's why a lot of us actually feel so bad within that kind of relationship because it's maybe not natural, but it's also where we've learned a lot of these patterns that are not helpful, right? To either like self-realization or
Mhm.
to like really what's possible in a partnership or a relationship, right? When you have like two whole people coming
Yeah.
together, like holy crap, right?
Yeah.
And it's really just an awareness. It's not like you're looking at some person saying I'm whole and you're not. It's just the awareness that you're whole, right? Which I can say that, but I'm still learning to embody that.
Yeah.
I get that about right here. I'm still learning to bring that awareness in my body.
Well, it's that
Yeah.
piece of like it's understanding again that 100% spiritual and 100%,
Yes, I love how you said that. Uh huh. Go
right?
ahead. Mm.
Because when we're all in our humanity, we don't feel whole. We're never going to feel whole when we're in our humanity because
Mm.
the ego has a way of working the brain, the way
Mm.
it's designed has a way of working to where you feel like there's always this like fear or there's this thing that you're looking for or like
Mm.
you're always on that alert
Mm.
thing. Um, or your ego's telling you you're not good enough, or that inner mean girl, right? Or whatever's going on. And so you might always feel as though you're never going to be good enough, or you're never going to feel whole, right? But when you step into that 100% spiritual side of you, because it's integrated and you're both, when you understand that you're 100% spiritual too, like you're a cosmic being that you're brought to this
Mm.
human
Right.
incarnated,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you're already whole, that this
Um,
you're just here for an experience that changes everything, right? You're
yeah.
just here to experience this life as a human being. So if you look at it like that, then it's like, how do you want to experience it? Do you want to
Uh,
experience it from a place of like lack and not good enough? Or do you want to experience of like, hey, I'm good enough because I'm here. I'm
mm,
simply here to experience this life. And that's what makes me good enough.
yeah. And that's where I can see that our spiritual practices can even just be about reminding ourselves each day that we're 100% a spiritual being
Exactly.
and that we're this cosmic being and so is everybody else. And right, how much differently are we going to be operating when we're in that awareness, right? In that more connected perspective and whatever does that for us, right? Which you and I love to talk about. Mm-hmm.
And I think people get trapped in that, especially in the spiritual community, right? That like let go the ego,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
the whole like transcend the ego thing, like
Mm-hmm.
erase the ego, get rid of the ego. And to be quite honest, you can't. Like it's just you're human. Like until you're dead, your ego is going to exist because it's part of your psyche. It's part
Mm.
of your mind, right? Now, can you consciously transcend that in the moment? Sure. Can you consciously choose to like to step outside of that and into the spiritual side of yourself? Absolutely. But can you just like eradicate it?
Ah.
No, you can't eradicate it,
Uh,
right? It's going to be there. Like if you're like, oh, I want some chocolate right now, like I really want chocolate. Are you going to deny yourself that chocolate? No, you're going to get that's your ego saying, I want
mm.
chocolate.
Right.
Right? So, like, if
Which
you're like,
isn't necessarily a bad thing or less
no,
valuable than a more spiritual aim.
yes.
Okay.
So we villainize the ego, right? We
Yeah.
like it's so bad. It's so bad to be
Mm.
ego. But in reality, like pleasure comes from ego,
Yeah.
right? And so if we're saying like, well, it's all bad, then
Mm.
we're making ourselves bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then we're saying I'm
Interesting.
bad
Yeah.
because I
But it's
haven't.
about embracing that part of us as part of the, and that's where I can see those real simple, direct ways you remind us that we can get in practice self love with just the ways we're talking to ourselves. And just
Yeah,
that alone, right, is one
right.
of the biggest ones that you have to see.
Self-talk. Yeah, because that's again where the ego can come in and try to like dominate. And again, you don't necessarily want to live in the ego,
Yeah.
right? It's like understanding like that's what's there and I can love myself through that and away from that torturous part of that part of the ego, right?
Yeah. And I remember one of the things you said, which I think I wrote down, how self love is like our connection to source. I think that's what you said. So
Yeah.
that's so cool to think that anything that we can do in the name of self love and get more in that feeling that that's going to be part of our feeling and actually feeling more connected spiritually, right? Because we always are connected spiritually, but it's just more that awareness, right? And that embodiment. So that's such a beautiful realization. Uh huh.
Yeah, because if you recognize that you are a spiritual being, like if you were brought here, you're connected to source. I call it Gus, right? God, universe, source. If you recognize that you are part of that, like you are created in the image of God, right? In Christian terms,
Yeah.
like created in the image of God. You are a part of God. You were created from source. You came from source. You return to source. Like you're cosmic being, like this is just a temporary body that you're in and that you will leave and that you understand that connection that you have to source, then you can't help but not love yourself because it's who you are,
Ah.
right? So it's like as you tap in and get
Yeah.
spiritually to
Yeah.
your grounded source, whatever that Jesus, God, universe, source, spirit, Mother Earth, whatever it is for you, the more connected you are with that, the more in love you are with yourself, like
Mm.
like
Yes.
in that place of self-love, right?
It's like a
And
feedback loop, right? And so, like, self love leads to connection with source, leads to more self love, right? So it's like, woo, let's do
right.
this.
Woo, off you go.
That's the treadmill that we want to get on, right? Or
Exactly.
the
Exactly.
rat,
If
whatever.
you recognize if you recognize that you are powerful, right? That
Mm,
you're a powerful creator and you're co-creator with source, and you have the ability through your mind and through your embodiment to create a reality.
mm. That's the thing, too.
Like,
We got to remember that.
why would you not step into loving yourself more?
Right? Yeah, because it's obviously, well, one of the reasons to do it is because it really starts to F with everything else when we don't, right? If we haven't noticed.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It can be turbulent, right? At first, like if you
Uh,
start loving yourself and you're like, well, I'm setting boundaries. Like that's something we talked about
right.
today.
Yeah.
And I didn't really get into that much on the call because we didn't have time, but like the turbulence that can come along with loving yourself,
Mm.
it can feel very like turbulent, like really
Mm.
scary because
That's interesting.
mhm, because you end up, it can feel isolating because you can end up
Mm.
feeling like, okay, I'm all alone now because I've created all these boundaries of these unhealthy people around me or relationships. And now I feel really isolated. Right. And that is why it's really important to have that connection to source, to God.
Mm. Mm.
Is that isolation feeling is an egoic feeling. It's that humanity of like, I'm all alone. Nobody loves me. I love myself, but I feel really alone, right? Or if I'm not in a relationship, so therefore I'm not good enough because I'm not
Mm.
in a relationship. It's not true,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not true. If we can connect that feeling or that source being, um, you get filled up in ways that you can never get filled up through a relationship.
Yeah, right. It is. It's really magic, like we want to play with, or we can. But yeah, and that you also see, like we're always in relationship. We're always in a relationship with whether with ourselves and or God, spirit, source. You know, and again, whether we feel like that's within us or around us or both.
Yeah.
That it's
Like
exciting to think
this
more and more of us are getting to that. And do you think that goes with this prediction that these times we're going to be with more of us getting into like a Christ consciousness? That's kind of what we're talking about is this awareness and starting to just live more in that awareness of the spiritual truths of who we are and such.
Yeah, this is an interesting can you're opening up here because like we could go on a whole nother like call for this.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah, the whole Christ consciousness thing. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of trains of thoughts going around right now, a lot of different, things being talked about as far as the new earth and the things that are happening and our new world and all those things. And I think that, a lot of the transition from 3D to 5D and all
Yeah.
of that stuff. But I think that what's important to remember is that it's already with us. We've already had access to it. We're just not
Mm.
been aware of doing it. Right. And we're
Mm-hmm.
now
Yeah.
played
Yeah.
in such a big shift that and I think we talked about this last year, right? When this all happened, right? That we were
Yeah.
going into a space where the connection piece was really critical and
Mm.
opportunistic, right? For us to expand in such a way that we do create a new earth, a new way of being on this planet. But it's not pretty and it's kind of painful at times, but
Mm.
I think we can get there. And I think that it's just, that Christ consciousness piece, that's an interesting one. So
Well,
tell
and
me,
interesting how it doesn't just feel like easy, good, fun, light, right? Because we probably have such fears, like that meditation that you shared with us at the end of the workshop this morning about giving ourselves permission to become our heart more, right? Or to become that. Like
mhm.
there's obviously something in us that's afraid to do that and to embrace that, or there's resistance, or there's conditioning, or there's
Right. Well, okay.
something.
If you just use the word Christ consciousness, right? If you just talk about that, if you say, okay, Christ consciousness, like we're stepping more into the Christ consciousness. Well, what happened to Jesus Christ?
Right. Yeah, that was one story we've seen.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So if you're like, well, I'm going to be in Christ consciousness, well,
Yeah.
you
It's
might
like
get persecuted. You might get
mm,
crucified,
mm,
right? You
mm.
might get like called blasphemy. Like it's that like
Right.
he did not walk this earth in a nice, cool,
Right.
peaceful, like there was no problems for him.
Oh, that's so. And
Right?
then isn't it so true that we also learned? I mean, the way traditional religion went with the story too, which I know you had many years in traditional religion, and it's so cool. Um, also, the idea was that we're even not able to do what he did, right? So he did that and got persecuted, and then yet the message was that, but only he's going to be the one who actually realizes that. So
See,
it kind of
that's not what
disconnected
the
us
Bible
both
says.
ways.
See, that's not what the Bible says. The Bible says he will come
Yeah,
and do
right.
works
I
greater than
agree, right? That's what
right?
I understand of it. Jesus was saying, "No, let's all do this. Come on."
And that is what Christ consciousness is
Yes, that's the awareness. Is we are all that.
understand, can you walk on water? Well, Jesus said you can do what he did and,
Yeah.
and more,
Yeah.
right? Again, it's our humanity, and he was so deep in his connection of being God and with God, and like that's a whole nother theological like conversation around what does that mean? Like where was he in that whole space? I would love to be like, I honestly feel like he was probably amazing to be around. And like he did okay, so like let's talk about that, like turning water into wine, right? He basically affected matter. Like so a lot of the things that we see, the things that were happening in the Bible are miracles, or we can see things were miraculously happening. But now science is proving that we can change matter with our attention.
Yes, right.
We can affect matter. So if we're stepping into Christ consciousness, right? What does that mean? Right? Matter, which we can. Like the double split experiment. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it was, proven that the attention of where our attention is affects atoms and molecules and neurons.
That's
and
right. The doctor, what's his name? This Osimoto or something like. Those studies. Holy crap! Yeah, holy crap! Literally.
Right. So like,
this is exciting. Go on.
Yeah, so it's the manifestation thing and all of that, right? But we're so like in our humanity that we get stuck and we don't want to. It's scary. We're that powerful, right? Because
and because we've had years of conditioning to separate us from that. But I love that awareness that part of Christ consciousness is stepping into like our magic, right? And you and I both fans of like Florence Scovel Shinn, who reminds that like the Bible, for instance, is more of a metaphysical book, right? And that each of those stories are supposed to be stories about what's possible for us,
right?
And things like our word is our wand, right? And all the and so many pieces of wisdom, right? The magic, the magical practices are in there. Like Jesus was a magician, right?
The healer, energy healer, right?
Yes, right. And then he was saying we can all be that too, though, right? Like that's the thing. Whew.
That's the thing, right? And it doesn't mean we're gonna walk around calling ourselves Jesus. Like I'm Jesus.
We're gonna call ourselves Stacy and LJ.
Right. Exactly. Because if you think about it, Peter, if you know anything about the Bible, Peter did what Jesus did, right? There were disciples that raised people from the dead. So for us to say like, oh, we don't have that ability, you know what I mean?
And isn't that interesting to think about raising people from the dead? I wonder if that's like some implication as to the power we can have upon each other, right? As far as like awakening and such. Interesting.
Yeah. So Jim Fortin, one of my teachers and mentors and coach, he's amazing. Comes also from a spiritual side too. And he recently did a podcast, which I'd highly recommend looking up. But he talks about death and transitioning and all of that. And really, it's been really powerful for me lately to listen to it. One of the things he talks about is how there is no death, right?
Yeah.
His brother-in-law is a shaman. So he talks a lot from the shamanic standpoint, but there is no death, right? So if we're talking about raising people from the dead, is it really that we're raising people from the dead, or that we're bringing them back from a different timeline or different dimension, right? Is it just that they left our dimension and they're coming back into the dimension, not necessarily raising them from the dead, they're dead or alive. Their body is in this dimension, right?
Yeah.
They're physical. So like I was saying on the call that we were on earlier about our bodies being like a rental car, right? Like we come in, like this is our rental car. We get into our rental car, we drive it around our whole life and we're doing all these things. And then when we're done, we turn in the rental car and then we leave, right? So it's just like that. That's what our body is.
Yeah.
And so if you're talking about raising people from the dead, like what does that really mean? It just means that you're putting them back in their body.
Their
body was still there. Like their spirit left, but they're coming back in. Right. And I think that's what happened with Jesus too. Like this is my own perspective, my own thought process. Right. But that like when he raised 3 days later, like he came back into his body, he just transitioned out and then transitioned back in and then ascended out of the planet, the earth plane. Right. So like, it's all like possible, interchanging in, out, like, and the people that have near-death experiences speak of it, right? They transition out, they see light, they see all these people they know, and they say, okay, it's not your time, go back. They go back in, right? And I think it's just this veil that we just cross over or we come back and but it's right there. It's like people are right there.
Yeah. it's exciting to think what's possible in the future for
Mhm.
humanity. And one of my favorite yoga teachers, Eric Schiffman, who's been teaching yoga for over 40 years. 10 years ago, I remember him giving talks about how he believes we're going to start to realize there's no such thing as death. And that
Yeah.
as we start to realize that, we're not going to have to go through that process, which is like a really fun conversation, right? So
Yeah.
who knows, you know,
That's
but
something that Jim says is that like if there's no death, like there's only one life. We talk about past lives, right? And he talks about how
mm,
like your past lives, it's not really a past life, it's just the former. It's like it's not the past, it was the other life.
mm,
It's like on a timeline of your
uh,
existence, right?
mm,
And it was this time and then this time and then this time and then this time, and like it's just transitioning of time, which really doesn't exist anyway. It's a construct of ours. But
right.
you know what I mean? So where are we in that time transition linear dimension,
Mm.
right? It's really intriguing. So it's like
So fun. Oh my God. I love where this conversation is gone.
I know, right? But let's
Woo! I
bring it
always
back
do. I almost
around.
fell over.
In the end, it comes down to loving yourself. So if you don't love yourself, if you see yourself as a piece of shit and you're like, I don't love myself, or I think I'm not good enough, or I'm not this, or I'm not that, then how could you possibly ever step into the magical being that you are
Right,
and
right.
the power that you are,
Because
right?
it's just such a disconnect. And if we really do want to like be the magical beings that we are, we need to remedy that because it's like casting a spell on ourselves, right? It's using our magic
Yeah,
against ourselves because our word
yeah,
is our wand, for instance. So that's
exactly.
why when we say anything negative about ourselves to ourselves or out loud, it's literally cursing us and having that effect like with the water, right? Where it changes your
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because it goes
yeah.
into your brain, right? And that's what we're talking about
And
on
your
that call.
brain. Yeah. How
It's
you're talking about the grooves we develop too. Yeah.
subconsciously programs you. So your word is your wand because it powerfully programs your brain, and we act out of our brains. It's scientific. Like we act from our brain. So that's survival, that's belief systems, all of that. Everything that you see right now, everything that people are acting, they're saying, they're doing, it's all coming from their belief systems.
Mm,
Whatever they
mm,
believe deep
mm,
down in their subconscious brain and in their heart, that's how they're acting. And so if we want to affect change, like we have to change ourselves, right? In our own belief systems.
mm.
So it's to try to change other people is just an asinine thing to even think. That's just, you just can't do that. So a lot of what's going on right now, I mean, we're kind of going off another tangent, rabbit trail. We do that a lot, but like, right now, a lot of people are like the whole I'm right, you're wrong situation,
Yeah.
right? And what you think is wrong and what you believe is wrong. And it's dangerous or it's this or that. And it's like we think by telling someone they're wrong, they're going to change. Like, how is that even, how does,
Hmm.
right? That's not going to
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. It really
So,
is a disconnect. It really
yeah.
just usually gets people stronger in their own position, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that when you're judging others, you're judging yourself. The most
Uh,
judgmental people I know are the people that are most unhappy with themselves.
mm, yeah. So that's where it's like a curse against yourself when you do that to others. Um, yeah. Wow. It's
Because if you
amazing how
can't
much
accept
it affects
yourself,
us.
right? If you can't accept and love yourself for all of who you are, again, that ego part of you that you
Hmm.
see as wrong, that you see as bad, that's judgment. So when we're in this whole spiritual side of us that we want, oh, the ego's bad, then you're judging yourself because you have an ego. You can't get away from it,
Mm.
right?
And it's a disconnect when we judge ourselves, right? It's spiritually disconnecting us in
Yeah,
so many
exactly,
ways. Hmm. Hmm.
exactly. Because you incarnated, you chose to be here, like you incarnated in this body. And so to judge yourself for that, you're cutting yourself off right at the source, right? And saying like, okay, well, I don't,
Literally.
yeah, literally, right? So in order to fully live, it's full acceptance, that radical acceptance of every part of you and loving every part of you so that you can love every part of everybody else. Imagine our world right now if everybody loved themselves. They would
Yeah.
understand that I don't judge because I accept as is and I don't judge and make it wrong. I have compassion and love and accept
Mm.
for myself. And so therefore I extend that to others. And if we did that, how would things change?
Right. Yeah. And it's like if we think we have a world of haters, it's really coming from self-hate, right? We have like a world of self-haters. You know, most of us have like deep-rooted like self-hate, right? Almost like the opposite of self-love. I'm speaking for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
so
not even a lot of us, it's not because we were raised with people blatantly telling us we weren't lovable, right? It's even when we've had the most amazing family experiences and, you know, not even been majorly abused, it's still there. So
yeah,
it's just something
because
to
it's
love
human,
ourselves
right?
through again, to not judge, not judge that
Yeah,
judgment. Mm,
yeah, it's complex yet simple at the same time, right?
yeah. And to just keep bringing it back to letting it be a spiritual thing and filling ourselves up with that connection each day feels like the
Mhm.
most
Mhm.
um, powerful answer, an
Yeah,
empowered way. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, that
Mm,
self-talk is really the key, because if you're telling your brain that you're not good enough, if you're telling your brain that all these horrible things about yourself, and then you go out in the world and you're trying to make an impact on the world,
yeah.
and then something happens where a hater comes along or somebody puts some comment on your post or something, your brain's going to be looking for that proof to prove to you that you're not.
Hmm. Right.
So when you see those things, they're going to floor you. They're going to absolutely floor you
Yeah.
and take you
Yeah.
out because you're going to
Right.
believe it to be true.
And you're going to create so much differently when you're coming from that place of lack and lack of worth.
And
Yeah.
fear,
Yeah.
fear of what others think. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
that
And you're
fear.
helping me see that self love is a spiritual practice.
Oh, yeah.
Really. I think
Absolutely.
that's how I would, yeah, I wanted to
100%.
say it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the deepest spiritual
Yeah.
practices.
And that makes sense, like why you would, I feel like you'd going to specialize in that as some of your work. And that makes sense that you would know to do that because you're so spiritually oriented, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's just funny that you say that because I don't see myself that way. You know what I mean? Like I've always, it's me, you know what I
I
mean?
know. And again, I don't mean to judge. I mean, often I'm like throwing these labels
Yeah,
on my
yeah.
friends and they're like,
But
hey.
yeah, I think that it is, I honestly do think that self-love is a spiritual practice because,
Mm.
um, I mean, I think that if you really like go there, if you really go there, right, inside yourself, like it's moving. It's truly moving and feeling and like
Mm.
love yourself. Like, and I think that's what happens when people have these like come to Jesus moments, right? Or they have these awakening moments where it's like, I felt the love. I'm whole. I felt this divine love source fill me up. And then they can love themselves in that place. Um, but again, it's who you are. It's part of you, right? And so it's kind of, to me, it's a no-brainer. Like why would you not love yourself, to be connected to source, to be
Mm.
connected in that
Yeah.
way?
Well, and it
Right.
seems like it's, if we don't, it is just really, it's like in the way of that
Exactly.
spiritual connection. It's like it
Mhm.
is. And so especially if we're feeling like we're having a hard time feeling connected spiritually, that's probably why, right? Because that
You're
piece,
judging
that's the
yourself.
piece. It's like
Yeah,
in the way.
yeah, right. And I've fallen into this trap a lot, is that like we
Same.
trap ourselves, like I'm not spiritual, like I don't have gifts, I don't have intuition, I can't hear things, and I can't, you know what I mean? Da 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 da. But it's because you're not accepting that. If you truly accepted yourself and your power, you have gifts. Everyone has gifts. Everyone comes to this planet with spiritual gifts, and they just got to figure them out, right? They got to find out what they are. But
Mm.
if you're hating yourself, if you're feeling inadequate, insecure, or not good enough, then of course, like that, there's no spiritual gift that's going to be like, yeah, I'll go ahead and hang out in that space because that's a
Yeah.
powerful
Right.
space. It's not. It's disempowering.
Yeah.
Right?
It's
If you
kind
were,
of the opposite of prayer too, that moment, right? It's like a literally a disconnecting practice when
Mhm.
we do that, especially with things like our words.
Right. Well, if you
Mm.
think about fear, where does fear come from? It does not come from God.
Mm.
It does not come from God. So if you are in fear, you are in disconnected from yourself,
Ah.
your force.
You could just always know that. Like fear means I'm disconnected. Period.
Absolutely.
Or
100%.
I'm not aware of my connection, right? Because we're always connected, but it's more like I'm not in my feelings of connection when I'm feeling fear. Yeah, that's a pretty, like we could really start to get that as a new um, habitual response
Yeah.
to that fear.
People pleasing is
Um,
fear.
right, and then it shows that like the way to take care of ourselves through the fear is more feelings of connection. Right, what can we do to help ourselves reconnect spiritually?
To
And
ourselves.
that's what's going to be the medicine for the fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
And when you tap into yourself, when you connect to yourself, if you think about it, you're unique. We talked about this earlier, right? Like it's snowing here in the Northwest right now, and snowflakes are very unique. Each snowflake is unique.
Mm.
But when you really honor yourself in that way, that's when the power comes in. That's when the magic
Mm.
comes in, because you truly are saying like, okay, I'm okay. And I believe in who I am and what I am. And I can move from that space because I'm connected to source in that space.
Ah.
I connected to my creator, how I was created. So I don't
Mhm.
hate on myself for, let's say I'm really messy, a really messy person, and I never finish anything. Like I start things and never finish, or whatever.
Mm.
Maybe I see it as a flaw.
Mm.
But maybe it's not a flaw. Maybe it's something to be embraced, because maybe you're a starter. Maybe you're a catalyst. Maybe you're somebody who is there to catalyze
Mm.
ideas and intuition and sparks and like be a
Mm.
light in those ways. And then you're just there to create. You're a creator. You're not there to do like organize things. But there are people that are like that, right? So everybody has their gifts and has their abilities. Um,
Mm. I love that too. How you remind the snowflake analogy. That really feels so good to me because, like you brought up in the workshop, that comparing ourselves to others, which oh my gosh, we're
yeah.
always doing, right? And that's such a disconnect. And so this other way of seeing like, oh, we're all so unique. I'm not like anyone else at all, and that's what's wonderful. And how can I love that and embrace that? It's so
Yeah.
different, and then it
Because
allows that with other people too, right? Instead of looking at other people and when they don't meet our expectations or we're expecting them to fit in a category, that we could be like, oh yeah, it's because we're all these snowflakes. Hmm.
yeah, because again, if you're not accepting yourself for your individuality and totally loving yourself for your unique individuality, then how can you love someone else for their unique and individuality? Like you can't honor it for you. Why would you honor it? Or you can honor it for them, but you can't honor it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
We see the goodness in others so easily sometimes. Like I can see your power, I can see your richness, I can see your truth, but yet we won't turn that back on ourselves and say, I can see your power, I can see your richness, I can see your truth,
Mm-hmm.
and allow that. Allow it. Like what's wrong with allowing it?
Mm. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with
And that it's such a way to reconnect spiritually, really, when we do that. So, yeah,
it.
I love that. I feel like what our conversation has been about is our relationship with our self love and with spirituality, right? And with our self care that goes with that. So it's so deep and at the heart, literally, no pun intended, of it all, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, I love just too how you bring in such practical clarity. Yeah, with our understanding it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's really, I think it is something that needs to be practiced daily. And it's very practical in the sense of every moment of every day, you have an opportunity to return to yourself and to practice those areas of self love in heart, mind, body, and spirit, right? So, whatever you're doing or whoever you're being, like it's asking yourself, like, is this coming from a loving place or a not so loving place, right? Am I moving from a place of fear, anxiety, stress, worry? That's not loving. Or am I coming from a place of love, gratitude, patience, joy, expression, right?
Yeah,
Um,
right.
so again, it comes down to the energy, right? So is it feel contracted or expansive? If it's contracted, you're not loving yourself. You're not in a loving place. If it feels
Mm-hmm.
expansive, you're loving yourself and you're loving others, right? So that level 5 and the energies that I talk about, the 7 levels of energy, it's that expansive energy of like the win-win, right? The love, like I love you, I love me, like we're all in this together. We're all going to
Mm-hmm.
win.
Mm.
It's expansive. But if you're in fear, anxiety, worry, this party's different, or this side's different, or this person's wrong, or that person's right, and all these different things, divisiveness and anger, frustration, stress, right? Very contractive. And
Yeah.
how is that loving yourself? It's not.
Ah.
Very detrimental to your health and your well-being. because stress, worry, anxiety, all those things create a toxic chemical environment in our body that creates a breakdown in our bodies, eventually tears down our bodies,
Yeah.
and eventually kills us.
Yeah.
Right? So it's that contractive state, that those horrible feelings of worry and stress and anxiety that are not loving. So if you're stressed out, you're not in self-love. If you're in worry and anxiety, you're not loving yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Really as
you're
simple as
not
that.
in your spiritual connection. You can be pretty certain that you're probably not feeling very spiritually connected if you're doing those things or feeling those things. But again, that's where the medicine is. What can you do to help yourself reconnect in this moment, or get back into that awareness
Right.
that you are the spiritual being and that you are deserving?
I would actually venture, LJ, to like take it a step further and say that you
Please.
are in spirituality. You are, if you are in those energies of like anger and frustration and all of that, you're in spirituality. But what energies are you listening to or abiding with? Right? In the darker, denser energies, some would call those demonic, demons, whatever, however you look at it.
Seeing
That's
that for real. And that's why you don't want to hang out there, because it's for real. That energy is just as
it's
powerful.
still spirituality. Spirituality is not just lights and like high vibe stuff. That's a lot of people think I'm spiritual, so I'm high vibe and nothing can touch me. And then if I'm not spiritual, then I'm not, and I'm in those, yucky places. That's not true. You are, because you're 100% spiritual, 100% human. So you're still in spirituality. You're just in a darker, denser energy of spirituality.
Wow, that's good clarity. I love that. I'm feeling that.
So it's like,
and again, not to judge that, but
no, it's not right or wrong. It's how do you want
not hang out in it and not take it lightly, because it is a thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Anger has its place. I'm not going to say never be angry. Anger has its place, right? Anger puts us into movement sometimes, gets us going. Sometimes we need anger to get us out of apathy, because a lot of people are in apathy and they need to get angry to get moving.
Right. It's like raising up on the scale.
Right. But to live there, right? So even in anger can somewhat be loving if you don't live there. Does that make sense? I just said it can be catabolizing. It can be toxic and break you down. If you live there, yes. But if you're in a space where you're typically not in that place, but a righteous anger, you're violated maybe in your boundaries or something like that, and you have a righteous anger of like, this is wrong. I'm not okay with it. I'm telling you, I'm standing up to say it's not okay. You're moving into action, right? And that's when you can get into higher levels of energy.
Yeah, so it's all part of our spirituality, all the feelings. Thank you for bringing that in.
Where do you want to reside? Where do you want to live? How do you want to experience this life? How do you want to experience this life? That's where you get to decide where you are in your energy levels and where you reside and how to move. That's consciousness. That's Christ consciousness. Like we're moving out of the consciousness levels and up into higher levels of consciousness.
That's so good.
So that's transcendence, right? That transcendence energy, that self-mastery, that consciousness of self-mastery, that's all here. It's all here available to us all the time. We don't have to like get out of our bodies or all of that. Like it's all available to us all the time. So
wow. So good. I can feel that in my body. Well, thank you for, I always want to go twice as long with you, so we almost did. And thank you. I'm rolling right from your self-love workshop that you so graciously offered this morning into this. So thank you so much. So I don't know. Yeah, so maybe and that was such a good spot that maybe I could invite us toward closing before I take you into 10 more subjects. But is there anything else you want to say along the lines of conscious relationships, or anything before?
Yeah, so I would say the conscious relationship with yourself is probably the most impactful that you can have with all of your relationships, right? So having that conscious relationship of self-love with yourself will create a ripple effect and the reverse too, right? It will create a ripple effect in every relationship that you have and will benefit every relationship that you have when you're in that place with yourself.
I'm so glad you said that again, because when you said that during the workshop towards the end about the ripple effect, I had thought it as you were talking. I was like, oh, she's talking about like a ripple effect, and then you said the ripple effect, and it struck me like, ooh, I can feel that and get into that. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so if we have any trouble doing it just for our own experience, right, to know that it's really gonna ripple out in all of our relationships
Yeah.
and be part of like changing the world.
Yeah, if that's
Yeah.
what takes you into that journey of self-love is because you want to be better for other people, then so be it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. If that's your reasoning.
Let that be the
Yeah.
reason. Yeah.
So, and I know you hinted that because like today was so awesome, and you've been doing a lot of group things, anyways, that you might be considering doing like a monthly or something kind of self love
Yeah,
Saturdays with Stacy.
I
So
think I'm gonna do that. Yeah, I
I
really
think
feel
that
like
would be amazing. I got so much out of it. I was really so transformed, and it was so connecting too. Like you do a great job of making it feel like we're all in circle together. It didn't feel like I was just listening to a seminar, even though I think I can like that too. But it was very connecting. I feel like I was hanging out with people, like hanging out with
yeah,
new friends even, and then yet it was like this like alchemical shifting experience for me. So thank
beautiful.
you. Yeah.
I'm so
And so
grateful.
how can people stay tuned, and anything else you want to mention
Yeah,
to
so
follow and
I'm on
learn as you.
Facebook the most, but I'm working on
Mm-hmm.
getting on Instagram more.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a circle coming up this Wednesday night, the 17th from 6:30 to 8:30, I believe. It's $15. So that's a women's empowerment circle. So it's for women. And our topic is self-love this
Mm-hmm.
Wednesday. And then I do plan on probably doing the self-love Saturdays with Stacy once a month, maybe doing something like that. So be watching for that for another one of those. And I might have you on as a special guest, Laura, to
Sure. I would love that.
talk about your own journey of self-love.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I definitely want to invite people to follow me on that aspect of it and watch for that. And I have another program coming up too, Worthy from Within. So
Mm-hmm.
there's information coming out on that too. So just follow me, friend me, whatever,
And you have
request me.
a very intentional, intimate feeling group on Facebook too, right? For
Oh yeah,
women. Mm-hmm.
today during Superpower Soul Sisters
Yeah.
is my Facebook group. So if you're interested in joining that, just request that, answer the questions, and we'll let you in there. And I do go there sometimes and do special things in there too. So it's a community of women that are, again, working through loving themselves. And it's a journey, you guys. It's a journey. It's not a yes or no question. If you love
Mm,
yourself, it's how well are you loving yourself? It's practicing. I think you might have missed that part because you came in a little late. But yeah, it's not a yes or no question. So don't ask yourself, do I love myself? Because you love yourself if you're eating. Like you love yourself enough to eat,
mm,
right? To feed yourself. Um, it's a question of how well are you loving yourself and in what areas are you loving yourself and where do you need to adjust? Not in a
yeah.
critical way, not in a condemning way, but in a loving way, right? Just
I do
expansion.
feel like that's very
Expansion.
fresh, that piece. And now you're really helping me see how important it is to, part of that can be getting the right support to really keep
Mhm.
shifting it, right? Because it is going to be
Really,
a process. I can see
always a
that. So,
process,
and getting the
journey.
supportive community and the supportive mentors and just
Yeah,
anything that can keep strengthening that, rewiring that. Oh,
exactly. Thank you
thanks
so
so
much.
much, Stacy. Yes. Oh, I'm so
Thank
glad you're alive on the planet at this time. And thank you
you.
so much for fitting
Likewise.
this in on top of your morning Zoom. It's
Yeah, I'm gonna go
amazing.
play in the snow, I
I
think.
know, right? Oh, I wish we
Oh,
could see, but we'll imagine the beautiful
it's so white.
scenery out of
Yeah,
your Pacific Northwest window, right?
it's
That's where you
beautiful.
are. Yeah.
Yep, in the
Uh,
Pacific Northwest.
all right.
Washington. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks so much, Stacy, and thank you all for
Thank
being here.
you.
Talk to you soon.
All
Bye.
right.
Namaste.
Bye.